Well, guys, we are back. We got Katie Page in back home. Actually, she's back home in Colorado. And of course, we have the very stylish Michael Glosson joining us from South Carolina. So, Katie, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Happy holidays to everybody.
It's Christmas. It is
Yes.
Christmas season. And this happens to be our last episode of 2024, which is kind of cool because we ended on a big note with James Fox, of course. Michael Glosson coming at us from South Carolina. How you doing, good sir?
I'm doing great. Happy holidays. I am really looking forward to this conversation we're about to have. It's our last one of the year, last one of 2024.
It's crazy how fast they go by. And then when you look retrospectively at your year, you're like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Like, you try to figure out which one's your favorite podcast of the year. And I always have a hard time. I always come up with three of them at least. And I
Same
can't
spot
narrow it
pretty
down.
easy for us this year.
What's that?
Same spot pretty easy for us this year.
He's making it really easy for us. So I look forward to diving into the program, of course, is documentary film, and also delving into some of the issues into the filmmaking of this as well. Katie, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I love this film, the program, because, I have adult kids, I guess, adult kids, but it's a whole new generation. This is such a great film to kind of introduce the topic because it's
Mhm.
taking it so seriously. You're talking about Congress and whistleblowers and skiffs and that, and it makes people that aren't into this topic stand up and take notice. So it's a terrific film for that, and I'm really appreciative of all the films that James have done through the years because, I mean, they're almost like required watching for people that need to get caught up to speed on what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Michael, what are you looking forward to the most with James?
Well, I'm looking forward to talking to him about the project because it took him 8 years to put this thing together, and you normally don't get a chance to, yeah, and a lot of money. You normally don't get a chance to sit down with a person like right at the end of such a long effort and see how they're feeling about it. So it'll be nice to kind of be one of the first people who've talked to him right before it's released.
And he's got great press release right now because of all the drones and orbs. It really is pushing people to look more into this and hopefully, I wouldn't say diverge them, but lead them to his movies to get more of a thing. I still think maybe the phenomenon and the program should be put as a box set.
Mhm.
It comes as a complete, sort of, I'd buy it for Christmas, definitely, 100%. All right, guys, we'll be right back with James Fox, and let's get this going.
Are you paying attention?
Well, welcome back to UAP Studies Podcast. Michael will join us momentarily. He's just running a little bit late, but we got Katie Page, who is back home from her. I think you went back to New Mexico, did you not, Katie?
I did. I just made a second trip back from the National UFO Historical Record Center, did more digging on that good old historic case of Snippy, and we're getting, being the first person to have eyes on that in over 35 years, we're getting some questions about, Snippy Lady. And I can just share with you all that Snippy is Snippy, and that's been a cool find. And we actually got to see the first two pictures of Snippy as a cult. So we found those gems of photos. And so it was a fun trip. And then we stopped at the Miller Ranch on the way back. So good
You're
journey.
literally my spirit animal. Like, you get to do all the cool stuff. See, I'm Canadian side, so we don't really have. If I want to go see Shag Harbor, I got to fly the other end of the continent to go see it. Like
Right.
even Falcon Lake, I have to go to Manitoba. Like it's so far apart that it doesn't make it feasible. Where I think with the states, it's really cool. You guys are all connected. You got great highways. You don't end up in the back roads like we do up here. So it's great. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I probably
Those two
get
are on
tired
my
though. A lot
bucket
of
list for
naps.
sure, though. If you ever go out there, let me know. I'll tag along.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Well, even if I come down for contact in the desert, I'd love to go in Colorado, hang out with you guys, and go see your sites as well.
Always welcome.
And like promised, we have the legendary filmmaker, James Fox. He's becoming legendary because he keeps coming out with more documentaries. And he is the guy basically doing the great documentary work that's getting a lot of people interested in this subject. I had mentioned this before last time we had James on, but even though I was doing this podcast, I'm interviewing Jacques Vallée and all that. I've tried to tell my wife, she's washing the dishes, going, yeah, that's nice. That's nice. And then we watched your movie, James, The Phenomenon. At the end of the movie, she's like, wow, I didn't know all this is going on. I'm like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, what? I've been telling you this for years. And that movie converted her over to one, accepting the sighting that we saw together that she never wanted to talk about. And then two, it got her to open up her mind to what this phenomenon is. And to tell the truth, James, your movie, The Phenomenon, and the program should be like a box set. They should both come out where somebody could watch both of them back to back and go, holy crap, get a really good overall view of what the United States at least has been dealing with. So, but first, I want to say welcome to UAP Studies Podcast, James, and kudos to you, my man. Another freaking heavy hitter that just came out.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate that. That's a lovely intro. And you know, it only took 25 years of trying to finally get the phenomenon made the way I had initially, you know, my initial concept was to create a body of evidence that could be presented to a more mainstream audience, you know. And again, I've said this in the past because I'm not out there to, like, you know, get people to join my cult of believers. You know, but I really feel like there's a core body of evidence that just hasn't had the appropriate or opportunity to be seen on by a more broad audience. And so that's really heartwarming to hear that about the phenomenon, because that's exactly what I set out to accomplish by making that film.
And it's true, you never know what your art or your, you know, project, and for you, it's a project of love. And, you know, I want to get into your aspect of filmmaking, not just the documentary, but the pain in the butt that's been the process for you to get this done. And that's very interesting as well, because people should know behind the scenes how difficult it is, not only for, you know, like Katie Page being an investigator, yourself being a, you know, an investigative, what would you say, documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work, there's a lot of pressure. And recently we were talking with George Knapp, and he had mentioned sometimes he's told things that he can't say to people, and it kills him on the inside. My first question to you, and we'll throw it to Katie, but has that ever been your case? Have you ever been given information you're like, oh, I wish I could tell people, but the circumstances of which you can't because it puts you in a predicament that is not good?
Let me back up and answer that question in a second. I want to go to something that was amazing that happened just recently, just a few weeks ago. Is I got to meet with the head of Arrow, John Kosklowski, and this other gentleman with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and Kevin, his name was, and he said, which I thought was really cool. I couldn't believe it. It was the last thing I thought he'd say. He goes, you know, the phenomenon is mandatory viewing for anyone who's going to work with Arrow, because they need to have a comprehensive understanding of the history of the phenomenon and the relationship with the U.S. government and all the various, you know, Project Blue Book and everything else. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing that we are that, because look, all we really did was put together historical evidence, archive footage. I think, were you just talking about our, sorry, was it Katie that was talking about, you were just hanging out at the archives, the new archive in New Mexico?
Yes.
Is that with David Marler?
Yes.
Yeah, that guy's amazing. Yeah. I went through his archives for the phenomenon, and it would take 15 lifetimes to go through half of it, but as much as I possibly could in the time frame that we had. And we got some just absolute gems, stuff that just would have, you know, yeah, right? And I remember even Richard Dolan saying to me at one point, my God, you know, I'm an historian, but you found articles and stuff that I've never, you know, and it was a group effort. So anyway, on the phenomenon, I really greatly, it's wonderful to hear that, that it is making an impact and a difference. And that's just a wonderful feeling. Now, in terms of, have I heard things that I'm not allowed to talk about? Unfortunately, yes. And a lot more recently. That's really frustrating for me. And even just less than a month ago, I contacted this particular individual and I said, well, can I just say that this is what I heard and not have it from an anonymous? No. And I said, well, why not? Well, those details, they could find me, track me down because of those details. I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm just gonna have to keep this to myself. But it was crash crash retrieval related information that was highly detailed.
And who is that person? And what did they tell you again?
Exactly.
That's right.
I know,
Yeah.
Mike.
He's
No,
good.
hey, look,
He's
and
good.
I don't. I don't like being in that position.
Yeah. Oh.
If I talk, all those points of contact what I have are going to be over, and that's it's just that simple. And I jeopardize, them.
I saw Hal Puthoff say at the beginning that like there were things that he would be killed for, he thinks, if he said it. And then I thought, well, man, don't ever piss Jamie Foxx off because he
out. I remember some people the sense of urgency for getting this film out because people were putting their necks out. And I remember a couple people contacted me. It's like, when's this film coming out? It's really like I feel like I have a target on my back. When is this coming out? Like the more public, the more a lot better off one feels about this whole thing. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a researcher and a filmmaker, and it's frustrating for the audience because they get upset. Like you always talk about this evidence and then nobody gets to see it. Well, there's nobody that wants to go after that evidence and reveal it to the world more than me. Believe me. And I dedicate my life to doing it. So,
but not at a cost of getting somebody killed or career wrecked or whatever. Right?
Absolutely. I can't do that. So
awesome. And Katie, go ahead. You're up next, and then Michael, you're up next after that.
Yeah, I'm just curious, James, is there a way that like the government can force the hand of private aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, GE, and the like to force their hand to disclose what they have? I mean, out here in Colorado, we have a lot of that, Northrop Grumman and stuff like that. And we do get reports coming in of strange things that look like unknown UAPs, but I often wonder because of where they're flying, could they be back engineered from these private companies? And how can we force them to reveal what they have? Or does that need to be kept secret because we don't want to show our hands to our enemies?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I'm asking those questions as well. Believe me, every day. I was laughing. You have like a disc-shaped object on a lowboy with a tarp over it, right? It's like scratch your head, like, what's that? You wonder how they transport some of these things around that are big and heavy, and middle of the night with a tarp over it or something. Who knows? I'm sure some workers have some pretty crazy stories to share. But that's something that I've been asking sitting members of Congress is like, what is it going to take? And they had legislation. I'm not sure if it was part of the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act of 2023 or 2024 or both. But they had some language in there talking about eminent domain? Is it imminent or eminent? I'm sorry, but it's basically any material, crash retrieval material that's in the possession of an outside entity, not within the government, has to hand it over. And that legislation didn't pass. You can Google, look it up, but I know they're in the process of rewriting that for a number of different reasons, and I'm not sure. I think some people felt it was good, others felt no, it's not good. Some people that working in particular labs, I guess they'd have to cough it up that they feel like it's theirs. I don't know, but it didn't pass. I know that much.
And it's a budget issue too, right? I mean, they're spending trillions of dollars, and shouldn't they be accountable for that?
I think more importantly, and this is a question that I'm asking myself, and you guys might be better informed about this than me. I don't know, but what kind of protection can we provide those firsthand witnesses, right? So they feel comfortable enough to come forward and reveal those details for the rest of us, because how are you supposed to ask for something if you don't know it's there? But if you have people coming forward that feel like they have immunity, they feel like they have protection, that feel like whatever whistleblower protection that has been written within legislation and passed and signed into law, that's adequate. And I don't think that's been done yet. And on that note, there's a clip that I posted on my X account at James C. Fox. Only a handful of moments in my career were those wow moments where I'm interviewing someone and I just the hair on the back of my neck stands up, or I just get this like rush of adrenaline where the intensity of what's being said is so profound and so like, and it just happened the other day. It's happened a handful of times in my entire career. Kirk McConnell, Senate Armed Service Committee, talking about being in the room with senators and firsthand witnesses and what that felt like. Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
What was phenomenal about it? Tell us. What?
Well, you have to go watch it, really. I mean, I can't do it justice, but I said to him during some of these meetings with the first-handers, and I can't remember if there was 8 or 12 of them, first-hand witness, people that first-hand worked on these technologies that came and met in the skiff with Senate Armed Service Committee and Senate members and members of the Senate. And I said, put me in that room. What was the atmosphere like? What did it feel like? Was it a lot of tension? And just, I want to feel it. I want to know what it was like. And it's very intense. You have to listen to it from the guy who was there. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. And I was kicking myself going, why didn't I ask him that question in the movie? Like, duh. That's the most obvious question to ask.
Still time to squeeze it in.
Yeah, not really, but yeah. Yeah, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, James, like we keep hearing about these whistleblowers and then these meetings that are going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
In your opinion, and sorry, Michael, I know it's your turn here.
No, go for it.
Do you think that they're told something that we in the community don't even know about? Something so out there that even if we found out that we've been all investigating this most of our lives, we would be like, oh, wow. Do you think they've been told anything or shown anything far beyond what we know?
Watch the clip with Kirk McConnell. I can't overstate that. Just watch it and listen to how he reacts. And I think that might answer your question. Yeah.
Well, I watched the clip and I encourage everybody to go watch a clip because that was my impression of it. I was like, that's what I need to ask James. Like,
yeah, just
are they shown or told something that is like, oh my God, like even we would panic at it.
I think it was pretty intense.
Okay.
I think it distorted his view of reality indefinitely. Yes. Okay. But exactly what was said, I don't know because that's risky for him. But I think it's safe.
One day we'll know. One day.
I think it's safe to say that there are a number of members of both the House and Senate that have learned that we have a crash retrieval program and we have biologics and materials. Yeah, that I feel very safe to say.
So here's a question I run around in my own head a lot, and I want to see if I can rope you into this thought experiment with me. There's a lot of people who ostensibly, or at least seem to know something about the nature of this phenomenon and aren't saying it. And it seems like that's been the case for, 70 years or so. There are people who've had various levels of knowledge. And
I had this conversation just recently. Yes, I had this conversation recently with an individual that I feel would be in a position to know. And he told me that there are probably roughly 20 people on the planet that have the bigger picture. I wouldn't say that have the whole picture. And I was like, 20 people, that's it? He's like, well, sure, it's very compartmentalized. And there are lots of layers, right? This is going on over here. This is going on over here. But that there are roughly 20 people around the globe that have the bigger picture. And that bigger picture, I am told, and I don't know what it is a little scary.
So, okay. So then that brings to the question.
I'm not trying to instill fear in anybody. I'm just relaying what I heard.
No, good things can be scary. Scary can just be big, right? So the question that I puzzle with myself is, let's say that, there's 20 people every 5 or 10 years or something. That's 100 people at least that we're dealing with who've had this knowledge, and none of them seem to have come out and talked. What truth or what could we find out that would be so intense or so, I don't know, either scary or incomprehensible that if we found it out, we could guarantee that nobody would ever share? Do you ever think about this? What could
I do? Oh God, yes, I do.
Nobody would share. Yes. Do you have any guesses in your mind?
Well, I'm sort of still coming to terms with my meeting with Bigelow because I wasn't ready for that meeting when I wasn't ready for the information that he shared with me at that meeting. And that was, and I can talk about it because he never told me not to. And he said, they're walking among us. And I remember 2 things that I remember from that meeting in particular. One was the impact. They did an extensive research or study with like the intellectual heavyweights of the, community, whatever, and financial institutions, religious institutions. Like he just said that, you take every scandal you've ever heard in your life and you multiply that by 1,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever the hell it was, and that's the anticipated impact that this reality would have on the general public. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm more inclined to believe that the impact of this will be much more than one would expect. I covered a little bit of politics, some disclosure in the program, for the first time, really, that of any movie I've done, talking about how this might impact things. Not me, but other people talking about it that have studied this type of thing. And I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, walking among it, the statement from Bigelow. And I don't, people are going to go, James Fox says they're walking among us. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I've been told by people that seem to be in a position to know that they're walking among us. But what do I know? All I know is that the craft of unknown origin of all types of shapes and sizes are all over the globe. They're clearly, some of them are being piloted by somebody. So why not Close Encounters of the Third Kind? We've already accepted that. I've reported on it in the last couple of my movies. The Phenomenon, Moment of Contact, the alleged crash in Varginha, Brazil in 1996. Live aliens walking the town. Like, sounds nuts, I know. And now I'm reporting on an alleged encounter that took place at Nevada, at Nellis Test Range, Nevada, 1994 in the winter.
It's
And
funny, 1994, how many things happened that year. I had my sighting with my twin brother the same month, the same year as the aerial school phenomenon in Zimbabwe. Then I'm starting to hear other people in 1994 having other big cases. I'm like, it's funny because there's like
China, there's a Mengjiao Gua, I think it was the Black Forest, 1994. Okay. Very similar communication that the children had described.
I did not know that. So this happened in China.
1994, yes. I went to China and investigated it a little bit.
It's crazy that they keep approaching schools, though. They're approaching kids, they're not approaching adults.
The Mengjiao Gua case was a village. It was up on a hill over a village, and it was a couple of like farmers that these alleged creatures made contact with. Yeah, Mengjiao Gua Black Forest. It's quite well known in China. I mean, the village could see the object landed on the side of the hill.
And it's weird, though, that it is, again, they target the kids as if they know it's the next generation. They give them the message, or they show themselves like all across the country, Australia, China now. I wasn't even aware of that. Thank you for letting me know. I have to look that up. Yeah. But I've always said that the experiencers are the secret to why they're here. The people that are repeatedly abducted are the reasons why they're here. We need to focus on them. What is it about them specifically that attracts a non-human intelligence to bother coming down and pick them up, right? Yeah. And we were talking about the hybridization program. People have been saying for years, look, they're mixing our DNA with theirs until what? They refine it? And then what does that mean? And I often think the hybrid is probably the in-between middleman. You'll need an in-between middleman to make two alien species be able to communicate together. Otherwise, there's too much of a divide. But
it's amazing that we're even having these conversations now, and people aren't laughing us out of the room. I mean, I'm reporting on.
We should.
I thought I'd never be reporting on, and that's the thing. The depth of the phenomenon. The more I dig, the deeper it goes, and I've learned, as outlandish and crazy as some of the aspects of the phenomenon sound, don't just have that knee-jerk response and dismiss it immediately, because suspend judgment, listen to the testimony, draw a conclusion. I mean, it took me a long time to come around with Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you would have jumped on it right away.
No.
But you've had an experience.
Well, I did.
I'm talking about Jason has had an experience.
Yeah. But I mean, I did
immediately.
Yeah. I did UFOs 50 Years of Denial in the mid-90s. No Close Encounters of the Third Kind, touched on Roswell, the alleged crash. I did Out of the Blue. Then I did Out of the Blue version 2, which is director's cut, which I spent a couple more years on. No Close Encounters of the Third Kind reported in those films, right? And I'd even heard about Varginha and Rua at the time of making that film. Mm-hmm. Then I did a 2-hour special for the History Channel called I Know What I Saw, right? Cases around the world. didn't touch on Close Encounters of the Third Kind at all. Not because I didn't believe them, but because I felt like I wasn't quite ready and maybe the general public wasn't quite ready. So let's establish that there are structured craft of unknown origin that seem to exhibit a technology that's light years advanced from anything that we have. It's a global phenomenon, and let's establish that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And then let's take a deeper dive into some of these reports of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? So that was like the progression for me as a filmmaker. So you can imagine, like, if I'm having a difficult time coming to terms with just those aspects of it, you can imagine what the general public thinks about it when they don't even believe the discs are real. You start talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and they're going to tell you to up the dosage of the medication you're not even on, right? So you see, my point is, it's like it gets push the envelope a little bit more, not just for the audience and for the mainstream folks, but for myself as well.
Right. Were you afraid of like losing credibility
Absolutely.
if you even brought into that subject? That makes sense. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of Bob Bigelow, we know that in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, we know that Bob Bigelow owned both Skinwalker Ranch and Mount Wilson Ranch, and you had Hal Puthoff on your show. So we know the likes of Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, Jacques Vallée, Linda Howe, I mean, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, all of them. They're out at Mount Wilson Ranch. We have photographs of them out there, NIDS and stuff. What do you think they were looking for out there?
The phenomenon, right? I mean, because people ask me, like, what do I believe, right? And I guess if I had to, like, put it in a sentence, I would have to say that there's an omnipresent intelligence that is non-human. It has the ability to manifest itself psychically, but also nuts and bolts physically. And it is certainly been stated by people that I trust and respect, doesn't mean that they're infallible, that the phenomenon is highly concentrated in that particular area for whatever reason.
Okay.
And
do you think there's a Howard Hughes connection to that? Because we know Howard Hughes kind of owned Pioche and all that,
I wish
there.
like hell I could answer that. I really don't know. But isn't it crazy to think that the phenomenon could manifest itself in so many different ways? Little tiny orbs, big orbs, discs, huge UFOs, platforms. I mean, one of the did you watch the program?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
everybody.
Okay, cool. I'm so glad. So there's a number of photographs that I included that were taken by the Hubble telescope from NASA. Those photographs. Do you remember?
You're talking about the Hubble one, not the Space Webb or James Webb telescope, right?
Oh gosh. Well, I featured a bunch from fairly recent photographs of galaxies.
That's probably James Webb. Hubble's like way.
So sorry. Sorry for excuse the correction here. But my point is this. There's one in particular that just leaves you sort of slack-jawed. And it's like you're looking at what looks like stars. Then you're realizing, wait a minute, those points of light are galaxies. And each one of those galaxies probably has billions and billions and billions of stars. And then there looks like there's billions and billions of those galaxies. You got to wrap your mind around it, right? And then you think of all the various forms of life and like different stages of life and progression. And it's very humbling.
And I think I was going to say, just watching those pictures, I'm in the same awe, but I keep thinking if planets keep having sentient, intelligent beings, the fact that consciousness is vast in the universe, as vast as the universe itself, all this consciousness, it's amazing. It's a realm within itself. And that means that the universe was created and consciousness was created in vast numbers. We might, now we're talking about, we're seeing a change in the topics. Now we're talking about, maybe there's a consciousness in the background of the universe we're all tapped into.
Yeah.
And like I said, it sounds woo-woo, like what you mentioned. You almost don't want to follow that. And
Yeah.
I think Katie, Michael, and myself can all attest that there's things in this like Bigfoot. I'm not a Bigfoot fan. I live in Sasquatch country. I've never seen one, never smelled one, never heard one. So I don't believe in it. I believe in UAPs because there was one above my head. But unless I see it, I don't believe it. And now we're starting to have that change where like consciousness. And one point that I wanted to bring up before we throw it to Michael here is in the program. You talk about the Calvine
Yes.
incident in England. What fascinates me about this is how fast the men in black move,
Yeah.
how they know that the people are on their smoke break, and that's when they approach them. And then when they talk to them, 2 weeks later, they just go missing or show up at work. The whole life falls apart, and it's amazing. And we're talking about this consciousness and how they know things, or how they play into this phenomenon. And yet these men in black, they've been around forever, and somehow they have a psychic ability, which means either we've tapped into the ability or they showed us how to tap into this ability. But either or, I still
It's
can't do it.
unbelievable.
I don't know if you guys can.
It's unbelievable. Like I'll give you a quick comment on that. I was investigating the 1966, I think it was April of 1966 Westall Primary School landing, and there were a number of Australian researchers that produced a documentary on that, and there was, I think, a science teacher at the Westall Primary School by the name of Mr. Greenwood, and nobody could ever get him to go on the record, even though all the students said that he was standing out there witnessing this disc fly over and land over the school in broad daylight. And we finally managed to get him, which is a story in itself, and I won't bore your audience with the details, but we finally managed to get him to come forward with the help of statements, direct statements from his students. And that's when he said that he got a visit by men in suits at his home that were very intimidating, and they silenced him for from 66 until 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, and then even then he would only come forward somewhat anonymously, right? I mean, it was kind of fill in the blanks, but he obviously was. And then he died. I don't know if he died a year ago, like fairly recently he died, and he gave an on-camera interview, fully on-camera interview. But yeah, he had men in suits, and that was 1966.
Why do you
I'm
think
just-
he came out to talk to you? Did he? Yeah, he felt like he was old and sort of near the end, or
Oh, I was begging him. It's a long story how I got him to go forward. I said to the fellow researchers, Shane Ryan and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now, who really helped make that whole investigation happen for part of the phenomenon. And I had researchers saying he's never going to come forward. It's never going to happen. Get me in the room with him. Got me in the room with him. And then prior to going in the room with him, I took audio statements right on my phone, right? So I took audio statements using Memo of all the witnesses that were children at the time standing next to him and just begging and pleading. I played them for him. Mr. Greenwood, please, I was standing next to you at the time of the incident. Why have you left? You haven't supported us. And, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And I think he
was the only adult, right, James?
Oh, there were a number of adults, but that one in particular stood out because apparently some of the witnesses that I was talking to said they were practically holding his hand during the encounter. And then all these students coming forward and then having the teachers not support what Yeah. And I don't know. I know there were a number of teachers out there, and I know there was also a photograph taken. I don't know what happened to that one. We got the James Kibble one that was most likely the same thing a couple days earlier or a couple days later. In any case, yeah, it was just fascinating. He finally cracked and said he would do it. And so, but my point is, like, what the hell? He gets a visit from guys in suits. He's a science professor, and then he clams up for, what is it, 66 to 2019? How long is that?
This isn't my question. My question is
years?
next, but I want to add a follow-up question on this, is that every time I hear anybody talk about a visitation by someone who intimidates them, they always say that it was just like really vague stuff that the person said. They're like, you're not going to talk about this, or, they put like a bullet in your car or something to kind of like vaguely intimidate you. That's the report we get. And I always think, I don't know if I would be that easily intimidated. Maybe it's something about their demeanor, but then I wonder, is it possible that they also say personal things that the person wouldn't then report to you? Like, do they say something like,
How's your
we know
family?
that we or is it like, we know that you occasionally watch a kind of pornography that would be really bad for your social image if we told everybody, so maybe you shouldn't tell everyone. And then the person says, these guys came to me and they intimidated me and told me not to talk, and that's why I didn't talk. Like, that would be a much more effective actual intimidation tactic if they knew something than if they just vaguely said, your family is going to suffer. I'm not sure I'd believe somebody if they threatened my family. I think I might just call the police.
No, it's hard to say unless you've actually been there. But I could go on a case in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, it just it goes on. And these guys are ubiquitous. It's unbelievable how they have an uncanny ability to show up. And the better the case, the better the evidence, the more likely they are to show up. Case in point, Calvine, 1990, we had no idea why the photographers had vanished. I knew about the case because of Nick Pope, and I knew about those photographs, and I've been going after them for on and off for a while. And thank you, David Clark, for all the exhaustive research he's done to find the Royal Air Force press officer, Craig Lindsay, who managed to keep one print, thank God. But and then we had Richard Greaves come forward, who was a co-worker at one of the hotels with the witnesses. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. So many of those critical details. Why did they vanish? Since 1990, where are they?
When
they fully intended to publish those photographs. They went to the local newspaper to publish those photographs. And then the government got involved and they vanished. Prints gone, witnesses gone, whole thing just gone.
I think it's cerebral. Whatever it is that they say to you, like these, people often say, well, they don't look human. There's something about them that's off. They must get to you. Like, they look you in the eye and they get through your brain and scare the shit out of you. Like, that event of somebody taking over your mind, showing you things you don't want to see, or something messed those guys up very fast. And there's no way to do that very fast. Usually it takes years for somebody to mess up that bad. They did it within a few months, according to your documentary.
Yeah.
Even, talking to Jason Sands on X the other day, and I asked him, like, did you feel anything? Like, when you had that telepathic communication? He goes, yeah, dude, like, that felt weird. So I asked him, did you ever have that again? He said he's only had it a few times, like a deja vu that would kind of bring him back to talking to this entity. But the scariest thing is if they're able to pinpoint wherever we are on this planet at any point in time, any hybrids, which we now know the government is working on, because in Congress, I think it was either Nancy Mace or somebody else that had asked, like, is there a hybrid program, like a mix of DNA? And yes, ma'am. Like, that was in Congress, a hearing.
Who said
yes,
that?
Ma'am.
Who told him that?
It was, who was it? I want to say that it was all four of them. When she asked about the hybrid program, they all said yes, they knew about it.
I did not hear that, and I was at that hearing.
I was there too, but I'll send you the clip, because they asked about the hybridization.
I'm not saying
program.
you're wrong. I'm just saying I didn't hear that part. But when
he said that, I smiled. I was like, they're mentioning hybrids.
I was going to go. Let me say one thing. The MIB. We don't need to stay on MIB much longer, but I just want to say that I was investigating the Phoenix Lights case. And a lot of the witnesses are very frustrated when you call it the Phoenix Lights case, because they go, no, it was a massive UFO flyover. They weren't just lights. It was a huge craft. But there was a woman who was a councilwoman, Frances Barwood, and she was one of the few officials that had publicly gone out to the media and say, hey, let's launch an investigation. Let's find out what a lot of these people are claiming to have seen, and let's get an investigation and see what kind of answers we come up with. And short, she was lambasted in the media. It was really, really unfortunate. I saw the whole thing. I was investigating it since the 90s. And I went on, I think I investigated that case for at least 10 years, on and off, right? I go back, more people would come forward. And she told me, and I don't remember if it was 99 or 2000, somewhere probably late 90s. And she was like, I got a call from this vet, Vietnam vet. And he goes, "Hey, you're one of the few officials that have publicly stated that we should launch an investigation. I happen to be a witness. I was on my roof. I was trying to get footage of the Hale-Bopp comet. I had my tripod, my camera, and I heard chatter on my CB radio of all these truckers coming up Interstate 10 from Tucson to Phoenix, and describing this massive boomerang-shaped object. So I realized it was heading right for me. So I took my camera, put in that direction, and it flew right over my house. So I got the whole thing on camera. Would you like to see this?" And she goes, "Yeah, that sounds great." So they made arrangements for he was going to drop it off at her office. I don't remember if it was the same day, later that day, whatever. Two men pull up, and it was July 1997. It was a couple of months after the incident. Two men pull up in a government-looking vehicle in dark suits, and it was like 100+ degrees, like really hot, July. Okay, Phoenix. And he said that they came up the door and they were very menacing looking and really scary looking. He said he was relieved when, all they asked for was the footage. Like he was like, I was relieved. And the only thing they said were from Francis Barwood's office. We're here to pick up the footage. So he's like, well, I guess I don't have to drive to her office. Hands him the footage. The only question they ask him, and you can talk directly to Francis Barwood. She's out there. She's still alive. She'll tell you this. The only question they asked him is, "Did you make copies?" He said, "No." They said, "Thank you." Off they went. So he doesn't hear from her. So after whatever, a week or several days, he's like, he calls her office and he goes, "Well, Francis, what did you think of the footage?" She goes, "Well, I thought you were going to come around to my office and drop it off." He goes, "Well, I didn't need to. You had two guys come by my place and pick it up." She goes, "I didn't send anybody over to pick it up. Swear to God." But he said he described them as being very menacing, like scary, menacing. And it was like July and they were in dark suits. It was like over 100 degrees. Yep.
I guess the suits must have something to do with it, right?
Did not report on it because I was like, oh my God, this story,
Yeah.
But yeah, I could go on and on. It doesn't matter. But yeah,
They just knock on your door for a glass of water because it's so hot because of the suits. We're going to threaten you in a minute, but you might give me a glass of water first. It's too hot. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, sorry, good.
I had another question I was going to ask you, but something else just popped in my brain, so I'm going to ask you this. So the Phoenix Lights brought it up. I know Dr. Lynn Kitai did a huge study for people who witnessed these lights, that they kind of had a form of the hitchhiker effect, that the phenomenon kind of followed them throughout their lives. And I'm curious now, and I just had a meetup group yesterday, and I had one of my people that attended, like, ever since I started coming to your group, strange things are starting to happen to me, like the hitchhiker effect. Has anybody in Congress experienced the hitchhiker effect? Or like when you put your consciousness on something, things open up. Has that happened to anybody in Congress? That would be really interesting.
Not. No, I've heard.
Dang it.
I've heard within the CIA. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I definitely have, and I've also heard certain scientists that were investigating the ranch. I heard that there was a hitchhiker effect there, and I was actually invited to the ranch by Brendan Fugel.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, God, I'd really like to go. And then I thought, wait a minute, I've got a family.
All right.
And if the hitchhiker effect is real, do I really want to pull this phenomenon back into my home, my household? And the answer to that was, if I was solo, I'd be like, let's go for it. But I opted out for right now.
Yeah.
Because of my family.
Yeah, that's probably smart. But I mean, I think sometimes maybe that's, I don't want to wish this upon these people, but that would open their minds to it. Maybe if they started experiencing some of these things, they'd go, okay, hold on, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think their minds are being opened right now.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine that if they were, though, we would never know. I doubt Nancy Mace or like Chuck McConnell or whoever would come out and say like, oh, or Chuck Schumer, I mean, not McConnell. I doubt they'd say that, like,
it's not career enhancing.
That's true.
Yeah, levitating and stuff. They would.
Yeah, it's not career enhancing, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a career killer. I
I'm
mean,
going to balance the budget, and I float at night out of my bed.
Yeah, well, get these orbs out of here,
Well, you know what I was thinking about is the people that like sleep apnea machine. Like
Yes.
if you're an abductee, do you think they show up and they're like, oh, what the heck is this?
How do I unplug this?
Yeah, how do we unplug this without killing them so we can take them?
I took a sleep apnea test because I have a little sleep apnea, and they gave me that device. I did it for like a week, and I brought it back to the doctor, and I said I'd rather die. And he goes, yeah, they're not for everybody.
No,
Ramming air into my throat, like when I wasn't inhaling, I was like exhaling. It was ramming it in, and I was like, "This, no way." And we had a good laugh. Anyway, sorry.
yeah, I'm supposed to have one too. I sleep really, really bad. I snore like a trucker, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, you're gonna die if you don't have one, right? You
I
stop
know.
breathing like 20 times in I don't know how long." So, yeah, but you should think about your health. The heart,
Yeah,
it goes a long way, right?
So the sleep apnea guy that examined me, he said, "You're 20 pounds overweight." And I don't really look 20 pounds overweight, but he's right. Like this part of my body. And he goes, the index, the weight, the fat index, whatever. If I got it down to a certain level, he said the sleep apnea would be a lot less impactful. That's what he said to me. So I've been trying to like exercise more. I started going to a gym. I'm going to get a pull-up bar in my edit room in here, and just try to like get my body a little more fit as I get older, and see if I can't shed a few pounds and get that, because I can't do that thing. I can't do it, man.
Next time you show up at a convention, you're all ripped. Like, did you see James Fox?
I'm all taking my shirt
It's
off.
over there. Bathroom's over there. So, let's talk about your promotional work for this documentary. You spent so much money because everybody's wondering where these drones are from. They're to promote James's movie.
Oh, yeah.
I just think conveniently you nailed it. You know what I mean?
We had a warehouse in New Jersey, and just chocker blocked filled with all sizes, shapes, range.
Budget must have been through the roof.
Oh my God, it was like $4 billion. And but yeah, it was I've been sharing this recently. A buddy of mine sent me a text, and he goes, "James, I just want to know, like, how did you orchestrate an alien invasion to coincide with the release of your movie?" That's wow,
You should capitalize on that though. That's
Hollywood
pretty funny.
couldn't do that.
Yeah. Fine, I'm coming out. It's me. It's my drones. I'm trying to promote the movie. Right. Just at night, like the drones have that banner that planes normally have to advertise something.
Oh my God.
Program.
The program. My gosh. That would
Get somebody who's really good
funny.
at artwork to do that. Yeah.
They finally get some overhead satellite imagery, and they're like, "Oh, we're doing the analysis. Wait a minute." And it's like, it's coming clearer and clearer. It's like the program.
Now available on Amazon. We'll get somebody who could do art design to do something like that.
God,
That'd be funny. Or the guy that does the memes that did your picture there, UAP memes or whatever. He'd be a good guy to do it.
Well,
But
it's been great because I had a couple people, one guy in particular, Bill Ottman, and others, when I've been in a pinch, because I had my last distribution company that just, oh God, catastrophic failure. Just, horrible. I won't bore you guys with the details.
I heard a bit about it. Yeah.
Took everything and, tried. Then another one. And then we were like, we're not using a distribution company. We're just going to do this on our own. So when you get a film done, all of a sudden you got to raise more capital, because you can't just like upload a film. It's like such a process. Anyway, and someone was like, "Hey, if you need something, the community's got your back, man. Like, put it out there." I put out like, we need some artwork. I got a bunch of people that contacted me. They did an amazing job. Like, thank you guys. I posted something about it on X. And then I needed a loan to get the film out, and overwhelming response. And we got the loan to put the movie out, so I can, employ, whole social media sites and PR firms, and pay for the trailer and all the various
process. Yeah.
A lot of stuff that people don't realize it goes into. I mean, we spent a lot of money just to put the movie out. So speaking of which, by the way, let me mention the film is very expensive right now. It's Amazon and iTunes, and it's $20. And I get it. It's a lot of money. But if you guys can afford to support the most independent release in the history of all the films I've ever done, we're in debt up to our eyeballs right now. If you can afford it, that's my GoFundMe. It's buy the movie. If you can't, sit tight for another 10 days and it'll be available to rent much cheaper. And we're working as fast as we can to get it on all the various platforms so it can be more readily available internationally.
Yeah. And the audience knows too, to support. We always tell people support the people that work, like buy their books or support their movies. And the audience is really good in that because we know you need to be able to put this out, make some money back from what you put into it.
People tried to get me to do a GoFundMe, and I was like, oh, if I'm in a foreign prison and I can't help myself, I'm a big boy. I can put my big boy pants on. If I need to make a loan, I'll make a loan, whatever.
Yeah.
But my GoFundMe is, if you want to buy it, that helps.
Yeah.
That really helps. Yeah.
And it's not like there's much money to be made in your
Oh my God. Well,
with like
the first 25 years of my career, I would have probably made the same flipping burgers. Right. And I had pretty good success. I mean, I sold it to Discovery, I sold it to A&E, I sold it to, NBC Universal, I sold it to, but when you actually got the numbers out and you calculate, it's like, yeah, it sounds like a lot of money, but I spent 8 years making the phenomenon. 8 years.
Well, the only thing that makes me mad is like, even when I was on the
no
line,
gray hair when I started that one.
Yeah, but people are upset that people are making money. Like somebody's like, well, do you think it's fair that Lou Elizondo should make money off his book? I'm like, no, he should give that away for free. All this time, the publishing, like what? Yeah. People expect everything for free because they think, well, the information should be free. Yes, but if the person invested, like Katie, for instance, how many thousands of dollars have you investigated, or spent on your investigations?
Right.
Seriously, you probably could afford another house at this point. Like, it's crazy the amount of money that we will willingly spend just to pursue our hobbies. And then the minute you write a book or make a documentary, people, oh, well, I can't follow him anymore. He's not free 99. Like,
yeah, I've nearly bankrupted my family last time. And I've said I'm not going to ever touch the tiny little nest egg for the first time in history that I had. But by the time I reached 50, and because I put my own money in for my entire adult career, my life, and I can't do that. I have a son, I have a mortgage, I've got a family. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Now I've got
responsibilities, right?
I got responsibilities. I got bills, and it costs a lot of money. I got to pay people. I got to pay audio people, B-roll people. My amazing cinematographer, David West, he's a phenomenon. He's not independently wealthy. I got to pay him. Then we got to travel, and these things cost a lot of money, especially to do it right. You appreciate higher production values, which I certainly do, because I'm always like, I remember when I first set out to make a doc on the UFO phenomenon, I was like, God, why is all this stuff like so low budge? It's like everything's so hokey. Like, no wonder why nobody takes this stuff seriously. So I kept trying and trying and trying and trying. And if you look at the progression of my productions, you'll see it kind of, the production values get better and better and better. And I keep trying to do that.
Yeah, I think we got time for one more question each. Let's go with Katie first. Michael, you're next.
All right. So I had a question. I mean, how do you handle when people come to you with videos or photographs with CGI and everything kind of being, I don't know, even with these drone sightings right now, I'm seeing Outlander. I'm like, how do you know that's real? And how do you handle people that bring you things like that you may suspect is not authentic? How do you deal with that?
I've got a guy, I went to Italy and I got the most amazing footage of a flying saucer I'd ever seen, if it was real. And I got a guy in Hollywood who wants to remain anonymous, who does special effects, and he can make pretty good determination because that's what he does for a living, high-end special effects. And he's pretty good at knowing what's fake and what's not. But I have to give it to him.
Yeah.
I went all the way to Italy for this amazing footage. I spent a lot of money. I went to Italy with the whole crew, interviewed the guy, all this stuff, sent it to my buddy in Hollywood, all fake. I was like, oh, God. And I didn't include that. So I have a guy that I do send stuff to, but I don't have I'm really busy. So unless it's something I'm going to be using for a movie or I could never go through all the footage stuff. It'd be impossible. Certain people, if it's really, really good, somebody knows how to reach me. Hey, this is something you really need to take a look at. Obviously, take a look at it, and I'll pass it on to the people that I trust in the industry. They can make the determination. Like we interviewed for the Calvine UFO photograph. We've got provenance pretty much now, but we interviewed the guy that did the analysis work did some analysis work. And then we also interviewed Nick Pope, who talked about all the analysis work the MOD did. And then we talked to a guy who did the interview with the two witnesses, the Royal Air Force press officer, Craig Lindsay. So we have a lot of, evidence about that particular photograph. We've done as much due diligence as we could possibly do.
Yeah, chain of custody is really important, but like
Really
with these
important,
ghost
yeah.
sightings, it's to the point now. You just don't know what to believe anymore. You don't know what's fake, what's not
Totally
fake.
true. Really,
And
really
maybe
tough.
that's done intentionally to muddy the waters. I don't know, but I'm to the point like I just can't even.
I know, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, yeeks. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Michael.
So when I started getting into this several years ago, it was just an interest in UFOs initially, and it has like spiraled out into interests in all sorts of things that I wouldn't have initially thought were related to UFOs, but now that I think are, and it's all over the place. But it's also kind of led me to change what I consider my spiritual practice. And I was just wondering, do you have anything like a spiritual practice that you engage in, and what relationship does it have to the sorts of things that you study?
My spiritual practice is I go in nature almost every single day. I have to live in an area where it's nature, and I mean untouched, unspoiled, undeveloped nature, not a park with ducks and a fake pond. Like, get out in nature in the wilderness, and I do that a lot. I did it today before I came on, and that is my connection with the creator, right? Whoever you feel that creator may be, that I feel closer to God, closer to the creation in the wilderness, and that's my connection. And I feel a distinct sense of connectedness with all of life, with plants, I look up into the cosmos and I think we're all connected to the same web of consciousness. I really believe that, and that's it for me.
You're becoming wiser in your older years, James. Very wise.
They say when you're over 50, you suddenly like birds. I'm 50 and I like birds.
Yeah, I got binoculars the other day. I went out and bought binoculars so my son and I could see the birds closer. Yeah.
Bird watching. You go from
nature.
UFO to bird watching. Yeah.
My dad was a quadriplegic, and I have to go to my son's orchestra in a second. But my dad was a quadriplegic, and he said, "Son, make me a promise in life." And I said, "What's that, Dad?" "Promise me you'll never take your legs for granted." And so I made that promise to my father, and I use my legs every day, and I feel so gifted, so fortunate that I have my legs, and that I can get out into nature. It's free to go for a walk, May not be free to go out and walk in nature. If you don't live by nature, I get it. But still, you can get out there and walk.
Yeah.
Walking is so important. Oh, my gosh.
I think meditative, too. You could process issues
Oh my
you're
gosh,
going
I'm
through a
meditating.
lot better. Yeah.
I'm thinking about editing. I'm thinking about how I'm going to put a film together. How am I going to get this next interview? What am I going to talk about on this next podcast? So nobody cares what I have to say anyway.
I'm just going to get drunk. It's either nature or just whatever. It's either nature or a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
James, we thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I put this on because it is our last recording of 2024. And, we're recording this on the 22nd. So this is out tomorrow on the 23rd. And I just want to wish everybody, of course, a happy birthday. And before
Merry
we
Christmas.
go, not birthday, Merry Christmas, a birthday of Jesus. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Merry birthday of Jesus. Merry
Birthday of
Christmas,
Jesus. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, just one thing I want to know from you, James. What would you advise all of us about these drone situations, seeing as we're going into the holidays, they haven't gone away? What would you advise the community and the public at large
If you see
to sort of
one,
move forward?
there are apps that you can get that identify things. If you see one, lean up against a wall, a pole when you're filming it, try to stabilize yourself. If you don't have a tripod, clearly that movement of your hand doing this and the move object, if you can stabilize yourself somehow, pull the camera closer, lean against the wall, try to make yourself as a tripod and stop the movement of that camera as best you possibly can, then do it. And there are apps out there. One of them's the Phenom. It's by Logan. And you could look it up. PHENOM. It's a red app. It's
Okay.
Len Val Logan made it, and he was part of the task force. So he utilize his sort of intelligence to create this app.
Right. Does it tell you if there's planes or satellites? And
It's constantly developing. It's constantly evolving. So you just go check it out. I would
that's so
definitely.
cool. Technology is helping us out.
I'm going to go see my son who performed in an orchestra. So I'm super excited.
That's awesome, James. Thank you so much. We'll let
Thank
you go,
you.
my man, and we
Happy
appreciate your
holidays.
time here.